Bang!
The long, dark golden spear was just like a furious roaring dragon that cut a bright arc in the emptiness before it ruthlessly smashed into the hand of a middle-aged man with a crown over his head. His hand had transformed into a claw. The frightening force shattered a great amount of scales on the dragon claw. The moment that long spear left that delicate and beautiful figure, another figure began to approach in a ghost-like fashion. An extremely sharp palm wind unhesitatingly and mercilessly slammed toward the beautiful figure. Humph! The owner of that beautiful figure narrowed her eyes when she sensed this sneak attack. Her sharp nose emitted a low, cold snort. With a shake of her arm, that long spear seemed to be connected to a chain as it was instantly swung in a soul-stirring arc, forming a semisphere that heavily struck the sharp palm wind. The powerful force erupted, and the two were forced to stagger back before they finally stabilized their bodies. Ha! It is indeed worthy of being the Dragon Phoenix Constitution. Its strength is actually this powerful. This failed surprise attack caused the man to involuntarily let out some praise. He laughed. Xiao Yan, why do you need to continue this stubborn resistance? Although you possess the extremely rare Dragon Phoenix Constitution, you have yet to mature. You are really being too naive if you are thinking of fighting the three of us alone. Western Dragon King, you should stop acting in front of me. The three of you had taken advantage of my father's disappearance to split the ancient Void Dragon tribe, resulting in the current state of the ancient Void Dragon tribe. It is not too much to say that the three of you are the sinners of this tribe. Xiao Yan's face was dark as a chill spread from her pale purple eyes with a laugh. The three of us also possess the royal bloodline. It is only logical for us to proclaim ourselves kings. Since when can a young fellow like you reprimand us? A somewhat shady-looking middle-aged man coldly stated. Xiao Yan, the losses from the internal conflict within the ancient dragon tribe have been far too severe. Why can't you take a step back and avoid this battle? There was a man in royal robes among the trio. This person always had a smile hanging on his face, giving one a good impression since he always appeared extremely friendly. However, only those who were familiar with him were aware that this Northern Dragon King was the most frightening among the three great Dragon Kings. Not only did he scheme a ton, but he would also use all means to achieve his aims. The suggestion to work with the Heaven Demon Phoenix tribe had been made by him. Xiao Yan glared at the Northern Dragon King with great dislike. This person was the person who would stab someone in the back. Back then, the other two Dragon Kings were tempted by him to separate from the ancient dragon tribe. This eventually led to them carrying out the split that greatly damaged the ancient Void Dragon tribe. Do you think you are worthy of having the royal bloodline of the ancient dragon? The ancient dragon tribe will really be finished if it ends up in your hands. Xiao Yan knit her brows. Her entire being was filled with a dark aura as she coldly cried out. The Northern Dragon King smiled upon hearing her words. He softly said, "Since Xiao Yan is so stubborn, I can only capture you by force. Once you witness the prosperity of our ancient dragon tribe in the future, you will naturally understand what I am doing now is correct. We should attack. Do not continue to delay. The situation might end up changing." The Western Dragon King and Southern Dragon King hesitated for a moment after hearing the Northern Dragon King's voice, after which they violently nodded. "Do you think that I am afraid of you just because your numbers are greater?" Xiao Yan's face became gloomy after she saw the three of them were preparing to attack together again. Her body moved, and she pulled back. A pair of 1,000-foot-large phoenix wings spread from her back. Those phoenix wings were flapped, and a frightening strength rose from them.
Attack!
These wings caused the Northern Dragon King to frown. A cold cry sounded, and his body took the lead in rushing forward. The Western and Southern Dragon Kings followed close behind him. Yellow Spring Finger, Yellow Spring Palm. Their bodies had just begun moving when an explosive cry suddenly resounded from empty space. A large finger and palm suddenly descended from the sky and ruthlessly smashed toward the trio. "Who are you, little thief? How dare you interfere in the matters of my ancient void dragon tribe?" This sudden attack also caused the three Dragon Kings to be startled. They quickly waved their sleeves, and a frightening force shot out with lightning-like speed before shattering the yellow spring finger and the yellow spring palm. The trio immediately turned their icy eyes after shattering the palm and finger. Their eyes finally paused on a skinny figure who was flapping a pair of green-red bone wings. This figure remained suspended in the air a short distance from them. "Brat, are you asking to die?" Upon seeing their attacker, a chill flashed across the Southern Dragon King's eyes as he cried out, "Xiao Yan!" Ziyin, who was flapping her 1,000-foot-large phoenix wings, was also startled because of this figure. Her pretty eyes slid over as a joy quickly flashed over them. Soon after, that joy changed into worry as she cried out loud, "Xiao Yan, what are you doing here? You are no match for them. Withdraw now." With Ziyan's current strength, she was naturally able to see through Xiao Yan's strength at a glance, an advanced one-star Dosheng. Although this improvement speed was already quite shocking, the opponents this time around were the renowned three great Dragon Kings of the ancient Void Dragon tribe. "How long do you need?"
Xiao Yan ignored Ziyan's cerere.
All he did was pose a question. He could tell that Ziyin was preparing a powerful strike. Clearly, this required a lot of time to prepare. Ziyin was startled upon hearing his question. She gently clenched her teeth before answering Xiao Yan. 10 minutes. Leave them to me." Xiao Yan gently exhaled and softly replied. "You?" Ziyin knit her brows. She looked at the somewhat skinny back. The three great Dragon Kings were the top experts on the continent. The Western and Southern Dragon Kings had all become advanced 3-star Doshengs. That Northern Dragon King was even stronger. He already had half a foot in the 4th star of the Dosheng class. If the three of them were to cooperate, even an initial 4-star Dosheng would not be able to fight with them. Even less needed to be said for Xiao Yan, who was an advanced 1-star Dosheng. What arrogant words! The Western Dragon King coldly snorted. An advanced 1-star Dosheng class expert might appear very strong in the eyes of others, but it was difficult for someone of this strength to stir any trouble in front of them. Xiao Yan was without expression. He completely ignored the other party's mockery. Both of his hands were swiftly placed together, after which many extremely complicated hand seals were formed. At the same time, the spiritual strength on his brow began to stir. "Do not drag things out with him. All three of us will attack together." The Northern Dragon King frowned. His naturally cautious self was unwilling to take a risk. Even though the other party was merely a 1-star Dosheng, he still insisted that the three of them fight with all their strength and kill him before dealing with Ziyin. The Western and Southern Dragon Kings curled their mouths upon hearing these words. They felt some disdain for the cautiousness of the Northern Dragon King, but they did not utter anything or argue with him. Their three bodies rushed out at the same time. Sharp lethal attacks whistled toward Xiao Yan. "Ki." The seals formed by Xiao Yan's hands changed with lightning-like speed. At the same time, his spiritual strength suddenly erupted from his brow. It turned into a 1,000-foot-large illusory figure that wrapped around his body. That illusory figure abruptly opened its huge mouth after the seals were formed. A strange and frightening ripple erupted from its mouth like a storm. Yellow Spring Divine Anger. Mao. Xiao Yan was clearly aware of the vast difference in strength between him and the three great Dragon Kings. It was impossible for him to even endure 5 minutes in a head-on clash. Hence, he had unleashed the only Tian-class high-level Do skill that he had practiced, the Yellow Spring Divine Anger. After the strange sound was emitted from the enormous illusory figure's mouth, the empty realm seemed to have instantly quietened down. A moment later, the expressions of the three great dragon kings began to gradually change. They had discovered the frightening sonic wave attack that came from all directions at this moment. Spiritual attack. Be careful. The face of the Northern Dragon King was covered with a grave expression. He had not expected Xiao Yan to unleash a spiritual attack. The physical bodies of the ancient Void Dragon tribe might be extremely powerful, but they were still magical beasts. Spiritual strength was the weakness of magical beasts. Fortunately, there were not many experts in the current Doqi continent who knew how to use spiritual strength to attack. However, not many did not mean that they did not exist. An example was Xiao Yan. Buzz. The empty realm began to tremble at this moment. Let's join hands. The Northern Dragon King immediately sensed a giddy feeling be emitted from his head after the sonic wave was transmitted into his ear. He explosively cried out, and the three of them gathered together. That frightening sonic attack had arrived before they could completely circulate their Doqi. That frightening attacking speed had caused Xiao Yan to suffer a great loss before. This time around, he had caught the three Dragon Kings off guard. They did not have much time to defend against that frightening speed.
Bang!
The spiritual assault quickly arrived and disappeared just as quickly. The bodies of the three Dragon Kings emitted a deep muffled sound the moment the sonic wave penetrated their bodies. Grug. The three stiffened bodies solidified for a moment. Both the faces of the Western and Southern Dragon Kings immediately paled. A mouthful of fresh blood was spat out. The intense pain of being sliced by a blade continued to be emitted from their minds, causing them to gain the impulse to tear off their heads. Little bastard, I will tear you apart while you're still alive. The Northern Dragon King's condition was slightly better, but his face was also a little pale. His eyes were extremely ferocious as they looked at Xiao Yan, who was a short distance away. His eyes were filled with a brutalness and a murderous intent. Xiao Yan's solemn face revealed a grin as he looked at the vicious eyes of those three individuals. The seal formed by his hands changed. He widened his mouth and a faint voice was slowly emitted. Explode! The eyes of the Northern Dragon King shrank the moment his voice was emitted. It was as though he had detected something. He turned his head abruptly, only to see another Xiao Yan appearing a couple of meters behind. At this moment, there was a fire lotus consisting of 5 different colors in the hand of Xiao Yan. This fire lotus was slowly rotating. That Xiao Yan lifted his head the moment they turned theirs. He gave them a mysterious smile. That beautiful 5-colored fire lotus exploded like a beautiful fireworks in his hands.
Bang!
A 10,000-foot-large firestorm swept over the sky at this instant. Its frightening temperature caused fierce flames to rise across the eastern Dragon Island despite it being extremely far away. Some of the weaker individuals were shocked to find that the blood in their bodies had begun to boil. What a terrifying firestorm! The extremely chaotic battles across the eastern Dragon Island became quiet when this earth-shaking storm appeared. Many pairs of eyes were filled with a rich shock as they stared at this firestorm that filled their sights. Even someone as strong as Shinamo ended up revealing a solemn expression when he sensed this annihilation force. It seems to be an attack unleashed by that brat. The expression of the first elder from the Western Dragon Island suddenly changed. His voice contained great shock.
What?
Shinmo's and the other first elder's eyelids twitched upon hearing this news. Their hearts were filled with disbelief. If they were to get swept into such a terrifying attack, they would not survive. Yet such an attack had originated from the hands of that advanced one-star Do Sheng. He is indeed worthy of being a friend of the Dragon Emperor. With his help, the Dragon Emperor might have an easier time. The group from the eastern Dragon Island exchanged glances. It was possible for them to see a joy on each other's faces. This was something they could feel excited about after having listened to a continuous string of bad news. Xiao Yan's figure rapidly pulled back within the empty realm. A jade bottle appeared in his hand while he was pulling back. He quickly stuffed the medicinal pills into his mouth. Having unleashed the yellow spring divine anger, and the most frightening 5-colored lotus flame in a row had exhausted him. Moreover, he had also formed the 3,000 lightning illusory body at the last moment and took advantage of the 3 Dragon Kings' inability to sense their surroundings after they had been struck by the yellow spring divine anger to quietly appear behind them. Finally, he exploded the angry Buddha lotus flame and completely engulfed the 3 Dragon Kings within the most destructive strength of the fire lotus. These few attacks that he had unleashed would cause even an expert 3-star Dosheng to suffer a serious injury if they had been caught off guard. Xiao Yan was clearly aware of the might of the yellow spring divine anger and the angry Buddha lotus flame. One specialized in attacking the soul, while the other boasted an exterminating destruction. The strength from the combination of the two could be described as terrifying. The storm was like a natural disaster in the empty realm as it emitted a frightening temperature and an annihilation-like wave. Even Xiao Yan did not dare to easily touch these assault waves. Although the yellow spring divine anger and the angry Buddha lotus flame are extremely powerful, the body of an ancient void dragon is also unbelievably tough. Additionally, the 3 of them possess extraordinary abilities. It would be difficult to kill them. Xiao Yan's eyes rapidly flickered while he swiftly flew back. Roar! The enormous firestorm in the distance violently shook as this thought flashed through Xiao Yan's heart. Its rotating speed gradually slowed. Finally, a dragon roar that was filled with a wild, murderous intent was emitted from the firestorm. They are indeed not dead. Xiao Yan's heart slightly sank upon hearing this dragon roar. It seemed that he was really dreaming of he wanted to kill the 3 Dragon Kings with one strike.
Bang!
Soon after the dragon roar was emitted, a dragon claw that was hundreds of feet in size was violently extended from the storm. 3 dragons, which were tens of thousands of feet long, forcefully rushed out of the firestorm. Those large, blood-red dragon eyes were incomparably vicious as they stared intently at Xiao Yan in the distance. These 3 extremely large dragons were the actual forms of the 3 great Dragon Kings, but their appearances were extremely miserable. Blood flowed out of their enormous dragon bodies like streams. Over half of their scales, which were as large as a human head, had been shattered. Deep wounds covered their bodies like gullies. It was even vaguely possible to see dense, white bones within the wounds. Even though the 3 of them had survived the yellow spring divine anger and the angry Buddha lotus flame, they had paid a heavy price. Little bastard, this king will ensure that you suffer a fate worse than death. 3 huge dragons lingered in the empty space. An extremely dense dragon might spread apart. It appeared as though the entire world was trembling at this moment. Vicious roars rumbled over this empty realm like thunder before spreading into the distance. Xiao Yan appeared just like an insignificant ant as he stood in front of these 3 humongous dragons. His face involuntarily twitched a couple of times at this moment. The bone wings behind him were flapped, and his body suddenly pulled back. The 3 large Dragon Kings had already gone crazy. He would likely end up dying if he were to fight with them.
Bang!
Xiao Yan's body had just pulled back when the 3 large Dragon Kings widened their ferocious large mouths. 3 light pillars that were 1,000 feet wide shot out with a bang. The light pillar contained an extremely terrifying destructive force. It was likely that Xiao Yan would completely vanish if he was struck by them. Angry Buddha reincarnation. The 3 large light pillars sealed off all of Xiao Yan's paths of retreat. His expression had become completely grave at this critical moment. for clusters of heavenly flames were spat out of his mouth. They rapidly swelled and turned into a 1,000-foot-large plate created by a ring of fire. A mysterious energy slowly spread from within the plate. This was a unique Do skill that Xiao Yan had comprehended while advancing to the Doshun class back then. The enormous fire plate had just been formed when the first light pillar came rushing over with lightning-like speed. Finally, they collided with each other.
Bang!
The entire world was quiet the moment the collision occurred. A strange force was emitted from within the circular fire plate before the light pillar emitted a swoosh sound as it shot backwards. Grug. Although the light pillar was reflected, the force that penetrated the fire plate still caused Xiao Yan to spit out a mouthful of fresh blood.
Bang bang!
The other two light pillars quickly followed behind the first light pillar, but all of them were eventually reflected. Nevertheless, the fire plate also exploded with a bang after the last light pillar was reflected. Another mouthful of fresh blood was spat out of Xiao Yan's mouth as his body flew back 10,000 feet. Boom boom! Those three reflected light pillars were ruthlessly smashed into the enormous bodies of the three great dragon kings in front of their stunned eyes. This caused their originally miserable injuries to worsen. Kill him! This wild and violent roar reverberated around the empty realm. Even the most sinister Northern Dragon King had become furious at this moment. The combined attacks of the three of them, the three great Dragon Kings, not only failed to swiftly finish Xiao Yan off, they had instead allowed Xiao Yan to leave them worse off. They would lose all of their reputation if this matter were to spread. All of you will have to lose more bones if you wish to kill me. Xiao Yan once again forcefully stabilized his body. He lifted his somewhat pale face and wiped away the trace of blood from the corner of his mouth. His black eyes revealed some craziness. The three great dragon kings were cornering him to death. Xiao Yan spat out some blood as a madness rose within his eyes. Both of his hands formed a hand seal, and an enormous illusory figure once again covered his body. Mao! A giddiness spread through Xiao Yan's head as the illusory figure appeared, but he continued to clench his teeth. He once again activated his spiritual strength to unleash the Yellow Spring Divine Anger. The frightening spiritual strength assault surged once again and ruthlessly struck the three great dragon kings. At that moment, the giant blood-colored eyes of the three great dragon kings revealed a dimness. Two continuous spiritual attacks posed great harm to them. The Northern Dragon King was the first to recover from this spiritual assault. His large body suddenly swayed as it swiftly transformed into a human figure. With a flash, he appeared in front of Xiao Yan. His expression was ferocious as he threw a punch forward, which heavily landed on Xiao Yan's chest. Grug! A large mouthful of fresh blood was spat out of Xiao Yan's mouth. His expression was ferocious as he looked at the vicious face of the Northern Dragon King in front of him. A wild smile appeared on his face. A four-colored fire lotus appeared with the flip of his hand and subsequently smashed into the body of the Northern Dragon King. Explode! Boom! A fire lotus erupted once again, and the Northern Dragon King was sent flying back 10,000 feet due to the explosion. Mouthful after mouthful of blood was madly spat out as though it cost nothing. He did not expect Xiao Yan to be even more ruthless than him. Xiao Yan had exchanged a punch for a punch. The interior of Xiao Yan's body was turned into a complete mess by the Northern Dragon King's palm after Xiao Yan had used his remaining strength to unleash a fire lotus that sent the Northern Dragon King flying. Even Xiao Yan's chest had slightly sunk in. Without his extremely strong body, it was likely that the palm from the Northern Dragon King would have caused his body to explode, resulting in his death. Two light figures accompanied by an earth-shaking murderous desire came rushing over while Xiao Yan was struggling to catch his breath. They were the Southern and Western Dragon Kings. The eyes of those two were bright red, and they appeared quite mad. The three great dragon kings had been beaten into such a miserable state by someone from a member of the younger generation. Just thinking about it caused the rational thoughts of those two to be overcome by craziness. Little bastard, go and die. The expression of the Southern Dragon King was ferocious. His arm transformed into a huge claw that ruthlessly slammed toward Xiao Yan's head. If this palm were to strike Xiao Yan's head would have ended up exploding into a bloody fog. Looking at the rapidly magnified dragon claw in front of him, Xiao Yan's body began to tremble in the face of such a deadly threat. The heart in Xiao Yan's chest suddenly began to rapidly beat. The strange bloodline hidden in his chest had begun to quietly flow out. It swiftly entered the many blood vessels within his body.
Bang! Bang! Bang!
After the feeling of that blood flowing into his blood vessels, Xiao Yan suddenly felt his strength, which he had completely exhausted, completely return in an instant. Moreover, it appeared even stronger than his previous peak condition. This sudden change caused Xiao Yan to be startled. He quickly recovered and was preparing to hurriedly dodge when an extremely bright golden light suddenly flashed past his eyes.
Key!
Xiao Yan's eyes were shocked as the golden light flashed past because he saw the arm of the Southern Dragon King be hacked off. The spot where the arm was broken was extremely smooth. The shock quickly disappeared. Xiao Yan suddenly turned his head around, only to find a purple-haired figure slowly walking through the air. A liquid-like golden sword slowly flowed through her hands while a destructive force quietly spread from it. At the same time, a mysterious, icy-cold voice spread with a pressure. This emperor will forever imprison you in the dragon prison if you dare touch him.